House weekend is this weekend for the Knights. Why is this the most important recruiting weekend for the Knights this year? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charge On. As always, I am your host, Sean Green. Before we get started, as always, a quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for the NBA and NHL playoffs this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on the game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. Guys, it's here. It is here. Bounce House weekend is here. Hope you all are doing well. Off season is churning along. We're into June, or we'll be into June tomorrow. Forgot there was 31 days in May. But we're almost to that point. I think this past week was very exciting because we got a bunch of NCAA news. Sorry, I'm going to do that all on camera. Lower my mic. But we got a lot of NCAA news. I know today we're getting the first look, or the first look came out at 11 a.m. So, listen, we've got a lot of announcements coming up. One of the big ones, I'll say it. We're doing a UCF Dynasty and we're posting on this channel. I think we've waited this long. It's extra content for us that, is not really feeling like content. It's just something fun to do. So as soon as that game comes out, we're going to be churning out content here on Charge On doing a UCF Dynasty. So excited for that. But this week is Bounce House weekend. And I did tweet out, me and Nick were supposed to do an episode. But, I knew we were going to talk about that. But I was like, let's send out a quick tweet and ask some of our fans of this show and some UCF fans questions they want to ask. Because, again, we're to the point in the offseason, and we've kind of been to this point the last month or so where not too much greater news surrounding team. Like, the team's basically set. At this point, we're waiting for the season to start. But I was going to talk about Bounce House weekend, but I'm going to go through all these questions. We're going to start with a question from @MikeTana_98, Bounce House weekend and some of the recruits expected to attend. So let's talk about it. Bounce House weekend. UCF, it's always, every single year, this is the weekend that kind of shapes their entire year. Right? If they are at Bounce House weekend, UCF is fighting for them hard, either in the 25 class or the 26 class. There's some people on unofficial visits that are coming to Bounce House weekend, but this is the big weekend for UCF. If you look at years past when they've done the Bounce House weekend, it's all the big time names that UCF is going after. Now, again, UCF is not going to get all these guys. I've always loved, and if you watched me for a long time, you know why I love Bounce House weekend being this week, because you get out in front of all the others doing their official visits. Years past, the Alabamas, the Georgias, they would host their official visits at the end of June, right? The last week, they would try to get it out quick, or get it out at the last second to be the last one seen. And I think for UCF, it's really worked to be one of the first, if not the first, out of the gate. Because it gives players the opportunity, some big-time players that, they might be going on an official visit to Florida June 7th. Or they might be going to, Michigan or South Carolina or whatever school on June 14th. But it gives a lot of players the opportunity with the last week of May or basically June, first day of June, to go to UCF. And that's why I love Bounce House weekend, and I love that UCF has done that in years past. Now, there's some big-time names. Don't get me wrong. There's a bunch of blue-chip prospects. I think there's 10 to 12 blue-chip prospects expected to be on campus. There's 3 5-stars expected to be on campus for Bounce House weekend. Now, this isn't the first time a 5-star has come to Bounce House weekend. I want to make that very clear. There's been 5-stars in the past that has been at Bounce House weekend and has attended, taken part in the festivities. This year it's a little different, and I'm going to tell you why. There's one name I want to discuss, right? Because again, going through all the names, you're going to see a lot of names pop up over the weekend that will tell you that they're there. I know a lot of the recruiting sites like Rivals, 247, Brandon Helwig, and Stephen Leonard, they've posted lists of all the names. If you want to go subscribe there, you're more than welcome to. Again, you're going to basically find out most of the guys throughout the weekend, and most of the guys have tweeted out that they will be there. A big-time quarterback, Malik Washington, he's going to be on campus. He announced that he will be at Bounce House Weekend. He's a 4-star QB in the 2025 class from the area. It's basically Oklahoma. He's been slated to basically go to Oklahoma for a long time, but again, local kid, always possible he could flip to UCF. But the one I really want to talk about, and the one that I think has the best chance, and I tweeted this out a couple days ago, was Malik Autry. Now, Malik Autry, 5-star, 98 overall 5-star, big-time defensive lineman, defensive tackle. He's been committed to Auburn since early 2023. February of 2023, he has been committed to the Tigers as a 2025 recruit. He came out, I know, Brandon Helwig posted an article where he basically said he met Gus Malzahn. Him and his entire family were basically starstruck because, again, he grew up in Alabama. Gus Malzahn, I'm sure he was an Auburn fan, and Gus Malzahn was his coach. What I will say is this is probably the most important Bounce House weekend that they've had so far, because this might be the first real chance that UCF can flip a 5-star in the class that they're actually recruiting right now to get him to become a Knight. I'm not sure it'll be done. I'm not saying he's going to flip, but if he was going to flip, I think UCF would be the school that he would flip for. Who knows? Again, I think this weekend is a huge weekend in terms of that, and a huge weekend in terms of just the recruits for 25 in general. You want to make sure you're leaving your good impressions that you've left however many times they visited. But to get him to potentially rethink his decision and UCF be one of the top places that he would be considering would be absolutely ginormous. And again, you have a lot of UCF's commits are going to be there. Tavion Swint is going to be there. And again, that's, in my opinion, one of the more vital prospects you need to keep signed. I think Swint could get early playing time in the next year or two if he stays committed to UCF. So that's somebody that, again, you want to continue to impress. And there were early signs beginning of this year that, Florida State was really going to push hard for him. Miami was going to push pretty hard for him. I'm still finding that to be the case, but I think Swint has made it very clear that UCF is comfortably in the lead and that he's not really considering going off that commitment. And again, I think kids should take official visits, even if you're committed to another school. I get you're committed, but you got to do what's best for you. So it'll be a very interesting weekend. And UCF always brings out the big guns. I mean, again, they get all the sports cars. They make it a really fun weekend. They go do scavenger hunts around the campus. And it seems like every time somebody talks about their favorite visits, UCF always gets brought up. Even if a kid doesn't commit and they say, what was your favorite official visits this past month? Every single time they're like, UCF was one of my favorite. Like they got us all involved. It was so fun. It wasn't really about football. It was just about us as people. And again, that's what UCF has done really well over the past, 4 years since Gus Malzahn has gotten here, is the coaches really create a bond with the recruits. It is about football, but it's more than the game. And I think that's why UCF has been so successful in the recruiting aspect, is the players feel like it's a family. I always found it being a cliche, like, oh, this place felt like family. Like, oh, they're my family, blah, blah. And you always feel like, okay, that's the most cliche answer you can give. But you really do feel when these recruits talk about UCF, they're being genuine. When they're like, it's truly a family atmosphere, and you never feel any different than that. Like, you feel like I can talk to Gus Malzahn and he genuinely cares about me and doesn't care about me as the football player, but tells me it straight up and cares about me as a human being. So I think, again, this weekend is always the biggest weekend for UCF in recruiting for the recruiting year. This is the biggest weekend for them, and I'm excited to see the news we get out of that bounce house weekend this weekend and how players are kind of feeling post this weekend. And I know Brandon Howell will probably be posting videos on his socials with interviews with the recruits and all that stuff. So make sure you go. Obviously, you probably already do, but go subscribe to UCF Sports on YouTube, and all that stuff will probably be there if he is doing interviews. But all right, now that we talked about bounce house weekend, let's go to some of your guys' other questions. Let's take one from @JackHarris2003. How important is this season for UCF when you look at the overall college football landscape? Seems like the coaching staff is really going all in to win this year. We have more big games on paper this year than we've ever had. Want to get your take. Again, appreciate everybody for sending in questions. Obviously, you're not wrong. And if you've listened to my podcast or my show, whatever you want to call it, the last couple months, me and Nick have said Gus Malzahn and the staff are going all in. Again, not saying they're not building for the years to come. You see how in the recruiting classes that Gus Malzahn and co. have been garnering, they are building for the future. But I think last year was a huge wake-up call, and I think they know what they ultimately have here in Orlando. Like, that's the thing. They went 6-7. Was it a disappointment? Sure. But I think they know that, and listen, call a spade a spade. I think Gus Malzahn knows if he has another one of those type of years, the seat gets warm. Not saying Gus Malzahn deserves to be fired. I'm a Gus Malzahn supporter. Even at times when people call me crazy, I think Gus Malzahn has done more for the program than most coaches. I think Scott Frost put the program on the map with the 12-0 year. I think Josh Heupel continued the trend, but maybe hurt the brand in terms of the recruiting aspect and hurt the greater Orlando area, but not really going after recruits, which I think hurt UCF. And I think Gus Malzahn has taken it to another level where he truly believes that UCF is a gold mine. That word is stuck in my head forever with Gus Malzahn as the head coach. And the recruiting has proven it. And also the Big 12 doesn't hurt, right? They are going all in on this year. Not saying they're going to win it. Not going to win the Big 12 championship. Not saying they're going to the college football playoff. But what they're doing is getting a roster that they feel can win every single game when they step on the floor. Because talent-wise, again, we said this about last season. At the end of the day, UCF, if you look at the recruits and the team that they build, UCF is more talented than a lot of the teams that they will face on paper. At the end of the day, they have to go out and they have to prove that they are better than those teams. You kind of do feel that there is a little bit of we need to take it up a notch. Now, to the main point of the question, how important of a season is this? It's vital. It's vital. People looked at last season as good. You got to a bowl game. You were the best new team in the Big 12. Good. That only helped recruiting. Because again, recruits seeing what you're building, they respect your coaches. Again, that's important. But if you just continued having good seasons, 6-6, 7-5, then you start to lose the lust. You start to lose the luster that comes with, this is a program that I really want to join because they win a lot. They put guys in the league. We're going to have a chance at a championship. Listen, UCF, first year under Gus, beat Florida. Second year under Gus, went to an American championship, lost in the championship. Third year under Gus, had a 6-7 year. Now in his fourth year, you don't want to hit he's just going to be average in the Big 12. So this season is vital. There are big-time games on the schedule. There are big-time opponents. But there's no opponent that you look at and say UCF doesn't have a chance. There are certain games that you look at and say UCF is going to be the underdog. Utah, UCF is the underdog. You can make the Florida, UCF will be the underdog. They're on the road, going to the Swamp. They'll be the underdog. You can make the argument Arizona, depending on how they play in the first couple weeks. You can make the argument they'll be the underdog at Arizona. But nobody's looking at UCF's roster and saying they're going to lose this game. They're going to outright lose this. You can look at every game on the roster and say, that's toss-up. That can be really competitive. So, very important in terms of the overall future. Not important in the terms of I don't think it loses Gus his job. I don't think, a bunch of players leave. But you did say, I know I'm answering this question really thoroughly. You can't do what you have done in terms of adding players, bringing in certain guys, recruiting at the level you're doing for this specific year, and put up a stinker. You can't go 6-6 again. You can't really go 7-5. I think at minimum, UCF has to win 8 games, which again is doable. If you go back and you look last year, UCF could have had 8 wins. There was multiple games they blew. Again, you look at the Texas Tech game. You look at the Baylor game. You look at Oklahoma. There were games UCF just didn't close. So 8 wins should not be this unattainable feat. And again, if UCF comes out and plays, I think the way that we think they're capable of, or if they show that they're capable of, 10 wins is a doable thing. Very doable. But I think if we're looking at how important is this season, it's important to get to 8 wins. If you don't get to 8 wins, I think you start looking at Gus Malzahn just a slightly bit different than maybe you have in the last couple years. I know some people already look at him different, but I'm the optimist in the group right now. Thank you for your question. I hope I gave you a good answer. At Daryl Zimmer, are you rooting for the Georgia Bulldogs to blow out their opponents? UCF could see a viewership boost if Georgia makes their games boring. On 9/14, Georgia plays Kentucky on ABC, and UCF plays TCU on Fox, which we did just find out about the first 3 weeks for UCF schedule. Obviously, against New Hampshire and Sam Houston, we're on ESPN Plus basically for the first 2 weeks, both night games. And then week 3 will be on Fox. So we've gotten 2 national TV games announced already, both on Fox. And then on 11/29, Georgia versus Georgia Tech on ABC, and UCF versus Utah on Fox. So here's the thing. Yes, I do hope Georgia makes the game boring. The problem with TCU right now is I don't think a lot of people are expecting TCU to be that good. I think they're expecting them to be decent. And again, I think it's a very interesting game. I'm happy Fox put us in a national TV game in week 3. I'm intrigued. Georgia, Kentucky, in my opinion, is the better game, potentially. That's why it's on ABC, obviously, for that week. I think the November 29th matchup is better than Georgia Tech. I don't think, to be completely honest, I think even if it was a close game between Georgia and Georgia Tech, now maybe that's a wrong statement, depends on Georgia, where they are in the standings that late in the season. But if you're just looking for the better game, I think people are going to gravitate towards UCF versus Utah anyway for that November 29th game. And again, it all matters where all these teams are. Again, if Georgia Tech is 2-8 or 2-9, I don't think people are going to be tuning in really anyway for Georgia Tech. Whereas if UCF, Utah are 2 top-tier Big 12 teams, I think the better game, I think Georgia Kentucky potentially is the better game on ABC, and then I think UCF, Utah is the better game on Fox in November. So, but then again, UCF TCU could be a really close matchup, so who knows? But yeah, that would be nice, Daryl. It would be really nice if Georgia could just blow out their opponents early. But I don't see Georgia being, again, I think they might beat Kentucky by a couple touchdowns, and we'll see how bad Kentucky is, but Yeah, I think UCF is going to garner a lot of interest with just the matchups they have. And again, that's already 2 TV games. I'm assuming they're going to put us with Colorado on TV. I'm assuming Arizona and us are going to be on TV. So UCF's going to have a lot of national TV games. From just the games I'm thinking, Florida UCF is going to be on national TV. So just on the top of your head, right now, you probably have 5 to 6 national TV games for UCF, which I think might be a record at some type of record, maybe not, but very exciting, very exciting. At quack23 _ or just underscore. Where do you see the team in their level of success in recruiting and wins over the next 3 years? How do you think UCF will be impacted as college football conferences become more consolidated? I think it's unique, Nick. First of all, I do think, you have to win to continue having success. But I think UCF is in a unique position where you're in a goldmine of a recruiting state. You're in a goldmine of a recruiting area. And UCF has proven, and Gus Malzahn and staff have proven, that even over their first 3 years, heading into now year 4 of recruiting, they've been able to recruit every single year the best recruiting class in UCF history. So, and again, now you're looking at in year 4, you have 5 stars that come onto campus, and not saying UCF feels like they're going to get them right away, right? But again, you have one that you really feel like if he were to flip, UCF would be a top spot. You feel like UCF with basically any 4-star blue chip that they want, they have a chance at getting them. I mean, if you look at last year's recruiting class, they had 8 to 10 blue chip prospects sign to their recruiting class. So if you look at the trajectory of UCF, I think the recruiting aspect is going to be there. I don't see UCF taking too much of a dip in recruiting. I think the success of recruiting will always be going up, which in part should continuously increase your wins in the conference you're in. And I think it helps having a guy like Gus Malzahn who knows what it looks like, and also a coach in Gus Malzahn who has job security. You don't feel like he's going to get fired. I don't think people take that into account. I think people are just, again, they're like, we need somebody new. Then you lose all the recruits. 70% of the reason kids go to a certain school, or I would say more, 80 to 90%, is the coaches that are at that program, right? If you fire a coach, most of those players leave, for the most part. So I think with Gus Malzahn and the staff he's got, recruiting who they recruited, the team should continuously get better. Now, again, there's transfer portal and there's so many different factors, but I think UCF, in terms of the consolidation and where the sport is going, I think, again, I've always said UCF getting put into the Big 12 at the time they did saved their program. Because if you're not in a power conference right now, it's looking bleak. I think the last little hope and shimmer for some teams would be whatever happens with the ACC. But then again, I think the Big 12 is going to raid the ACC when all that stuff happens, when Florida State leaves and Clemson leaves, and when all that happens, the Big 12 is going to take some of those ACC schools, which protects UCF from anything in the future. Now, me and Nick are going to talk in a week or so about, the new colleges paying athletes and that it's not going to be, like the NIL collectives anymore. We'll talk about that in like a week or so, but that's a whole other ballgame. But I think if you're looking at UCF as how their future looks and how they'll be impacted, I think UCF's in a really good position right now compared to many other programs. I think UCF is continuing to rise up every single year. And if there was anything crazy that were happen, UCF would be a school that many would be considered. But I think ultimately it's going to, before there goes to basically the 60 or 70 teams, it's going to go to a 3 conference where it's SEC, Big 10, Big 12. But I've always stood by that over the last however many months. I've always said that personally, I think the ACC is dead on arrival. They've been dead for a year or so. It just, honestly, when the time comes that everything decides to get blown up, which might be next offseason, who knows? But thank you for your question. Let me get, do we have one more? We have one more. And I actually, I know this answer and I can explain it well. At Matt Singh's Opera says, I'm wondering if UCF will be a full share member of the Big 12 before the situation changes again. Will they ever be on an equal playing field money-wise? So I'm assuming you mean when a situation changes regarding, changes in the Power 4 landscape and stuff like that. UCF will be a full share member next season. So this is the last season. They had 2 seasons of getting paid basically half of what they would make. Next season, they will become a full-fledged member of the Big 12 Conference. So they'll be going from making about $20 million to $50 million. So it's going to be a huge jump in terms of what kind of money UCF will be bringing in. That's going to be important because, again, when we talk about it in a couple weeks or so, the schools having to pay players and stuff like that, you're going to need to have a lot. You're going to need to make money. You're going to need to be able to bring a certain revenue in and be able to distribute certain things to certain players and be able to also run your program. But UCF will be on a equal playing field next season. And again, compared to what they were making in the American, they were making $7 million in the American. They're making about 18 to 20 right now. They're making double what they were making. And again, they're still having to pay off. They have to pay their exit fee from the American and their entry fee to the Big 12. So there's a lot of money things that are going on with UCF, but they will be making their full-fledged or full amount, you could say, next season. So the 2025-2026 season, UCF will become a full-fledged member, which will, again, help a lot of different things. And again, who knows? I think next offseason, a lot of things are going to change. Luckily, we got a somewhat quiet offseason this year. If you remember, last year was the craziness with all the Pac-12 stuff and movement. I think next offseason specifically, you're going to get a lot of stuff similar to that. You're going to hear a lot about not necessarily teams moving from the Big 12 anywhere, but the ACC stuff is going to be very, very loud. So we'll see what happens with that. But again, thank you guys for the questions. I really appreciate it. We're going to do that a couple more times during this quote-unquote off-season. But again, really appreciate it. And it's going to be interesting, guys. This is a huge weekend for UCF. We'll talk about it more next week on Charge On. If you guys are expecting some more UCF reports, we will not be doing a UCF report for the next couple weeks. So be on the lookout. We're probably coming back there on the 16th of June. So if you're a UCF report, you've been keeping up with that, we won't be doing another episode until the 16th. But as always, Charge On will be posted every single week. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, do all that you do. We greatly appreciate it. Please follow me on X at Sean M.R. Green. I post all UCF content as well as Orlando Magic content on there. So please go follow me there as well. Alrighty, this has been Charge On presented by Bet Online. We will see you next week.